The early medieval India, when it comes to the early medieval India, we often hear two concepts. One is feudalism, the other one is the concept of classical age. So in this video, I'm going to discuss whether this particular time period can be categorized as a feudal age or a classical age, or something that is not neither of them. The concepts of medievalism and classical age have been discussed by different scholars. So in this particular video, I'm mainly drawing from the writings of B.D. Chattopadhyay. So B.D. Chattopadhyay discussed or explored actually both the terms medievalism and classical age in context of Indian history. So he argues that a time period from the 3rd to 6th centuries can be considered as classical age, and here he agrees with other historians of ancient India to say that in this particular time we see certain characteristics that are typical of classical age. And he also discusses what is medievalism. So usually medievalism implies medieval age or pertaining to middle age. This can be in context of religion or philosophy. Classicism, on the other hand, basically is about the best of literature, art, or culture. In India, different characteristics of medievalism and classical age were visible in early medieval period. Now, from 3rd to 6th centuries is considered as a time period when India reached one of its classical ages. This was a model phase. Basically, whatever developments we see in context of Sanskrit literature, Tamil literature, in context of compilation of already existing literatures and writing of new literatures, also developments in Hinduism, all of these are characteristics of classical age. So all of these reach its highest pinnacle at this particular time. Another important characteristics of classical age in ancient Indian history is the prevalence of monarchies. So monarchy as a state structure became quite common and ideal also. Any deviation from these social norms would be considered as Kali at this particular time. Kali basically means Kali Yug, or an age where we see the decline of Varna Dharma, or following the fourfold Varna division. Also, Hinduism became a standard religion and mythologies were created to spread the ideas of Hinduism in different regions in India. Also, the concept of India at that time, it was the term Bharatvarsh was used, also became known in this particular time. So even though there was no nation, but the concept of country became known. Post-classicism and early medieval. Now we know what classicism implies. So what happened after 6th century, after in post-classical time? Here we have to see or understand the medieval time, because whenever we talk about medieval time in Indian history, we talk about the kingdoms like the Cholas or Pallavas. We also talk about the Delhi Sultanate or the Mughal time. So this entire time period is considered as medieval, and that is why often scholars like B.D. Chattopadhyay, they try to identify the early medieval phase, or how it is different from the medieval age. So medieval India can be identified from the degeneration of post-classical period. Political degeneration is another characteristics of post-classical period. So in post-classical period, after 6th century, we see that the standards of classical age, like monarchy or Varna Dharma, these were getting eroded. So we see that in different regions, different polities started emerging. We also see the emergence of the concept of Jati. Now Jati is different from Varna. Jati is the result of Varna Sanskar, or illegal intermixing of Varna. So basically this is against Varna Dharma. Again, we see degeneration in provincial and feudal art, provincial art in general, and that means art become provincial and feudal. So from classical art, we see a shift towards provincial and feudal art. Concept of degeneration of Hindu mind also came into existence. Here we see this in context of art, and often European historians have talked about this, degeneration of Hindu mind, which was reflected in the art form, that the art itself started getting deteriorated. That is a European conception. Again, we also see emergence of feudal order, and this is something where many different Indian historians have applied this idea of feudal order in context of India to explain the degeneration or deviation from classical age. This feudal order was preceded by an exploitative state, and feudal order itself is marked by economic crisis. So often this was the assumption. Now we also see the emergence of regions in India in this post-classical age, which is also characterized as early medieval age. So there are different regions in India. Researches conducted by Nilkanta Shastri, Noboru Karashima, Keshavan Valutat and others show early historic South India was a pre-state society. Here the transition was from early historic to early medieval. So when we say that from post-classical time we see the emergence of early medieval, this is not a general concept, because in context of South India we have seen that pre-state societies, that means there was no state. From there we see the emergence of early medieval society. So from early historic to early medieval there was this direct transition. There was no classical period as such in between, or monarchies in between. Hermann Kulke and Dietmar Rotermund argued that medieval age was marked by regional kingdoms. The Hindu kingdoms were marked by military feudalism. So here again, Hermann Kulke and Dietmar Rotermund argues that it was not exactly decline or disintegration, but it was actually emergence of a new sort of polity, which was the regional kingdoms. Romila Thapar also had a similar opinion when she said that 9th century, which comes in this early medieval time period, was the time when many new institutions emerged in India, and they continued to strive in the later period. So all these different scholars, they give different interpretation about post-classical time and also about early medieval time. So while the first argument says that there was a direct shift from early society, that early society means when people started reading and writing in South India, from there to early medieval time. In case of rest of the regions in India, we see that there are many institutions like regional state formation were coming up in this particular time. So it was not exactly a time of disintegration or post-classical time. So we can actually question this kind of argument of post-classical, or anything that has to do with the end of golden time. B.D. Chattopadhyay argues that early medieval age was marked by monarchical states, emergence of states as special cultural formation, and religious heterogeneity and accommodation in Hinduism. So we see many different developments in early medieval time as argued by B.D. Chattopadhyay. So he says that the monarchical states that were there, they continued to exist at different regions. There were also some emergence of culture at different regions, and these cultures were associated with a particular space. The regional cultures that we see now in India, like Marathi, that is attached to one particular geography, or Bengali, the emergence of this sort of special cultural formation was visible at its earliest form in this time. Also we see religious accommodation. So Hinduism as a religion was becoming popular, and it was getting adopted in different regions, but at the same time the religion itself also accommodated regional diversities, so it became heterogeneous and accommodative in nature. In early medieval time, ideas of classical age like monarchy spread to new regions. State formation was visible in regions in eastern and western India. State formation in Assam and proliferation of Rajput states are some examples for that. Hinduism of classical time also spread to the regions. Sanskritization process was also visible. Hinduism became the religion of the political authority. At the same time, we also see emergence of different languages. These vernaculars did not replace Sanskrit as a medium of communication. Vernaculars were linked to the Sanskrit, and that means that these regional languages were getting some kind of a hallowed origin. Even though some vernaculars had mixed origin, like some of the vernaculars, they emerged mostly from Dravidian language family. Some other vernaculars heavily borrowed from non-Sanskritic languages like Bodo or Khasi. So we basically see that despite having diverse origin, the languages always, the vernaculars, these were connected to Sanskrit language. At this particular time, we also see one concept of, that is feudalism, being discussed by different Marxist historians. And feudalism is often discussed in context of domination and subordination in society, economy, and politics. B.D. Chattopadhyay argues that having multiple layers of land holdings does not necessarily mean presence of feudalism. He also questioned the possible origin of feudalism in India and how it can be accommodated in the periodization of Indian history. Hence, a fresh perspective is required to study early medieval Indian history. Now there is also a connection of feudalism and medievalism. Medievalism was present in India long before the concept of Muslim rule or Delhi Sultanate was established. The early medieval phase can be associated with feudalism. In this time, there was political decentralization, landed intermediaries were emerging, a shift from market economy to self-centered village economy coming into existence. Peasantry was subjugated. There was also proliferation of jati, and feudal ideology became common. So when we talk about feudal ideology, we talk about any ideology where there is this concept of devotion, subordination, and bhakti is a good example of that, because in bhakti movement also we see the application of this feudal concept in context of religion, where the devotee feels subordinate to the Lord. In conclusion, B.D. Chattopadhyay's work offers a new perspective to see the early medieval time in Indian history. The consensus is about the classical age, which is from 3rd to 6th centuries AD. However, in post-classical age, we not simply see decline or disintegration, because we also see emergence of regional polities in the form of the numerous Rajput groups that emerged in different regions in India. Also, we see different state formation happening in Assam, in Himachal Pradesh. So, state formation at regional level was common in this particular time. We also see emergence of linguistic groups or different vernaculars in this particular time. There was decay or decline in different urban centers, but also we see emergence of new sort of economy in this particular time. So what we can say is that this particular time, this early medieval time from post 6th century till the emergence of Delhi Sultanate was a complex time period when some new institutions emerged, some new state formation was happening, new linguistic identities were coming into existence. Similarly, new literary cultures also emerged. Hinduism became complex and accommodative. So all of these changes were not necessarily negative. And when it comes to feudalism or feudal structure, this was also something that was many historians have tried to apply the ideas of feudalism. However, the idea that before feudalism, there was some kind of a coercive state formation, and after that coercive state formation, there was this emergence of feudalism. This theory cannot be applied in the entire Indian subcontinent, because we have seen that in South India, before this early medieval time, there was a literate society, but then from early literate society to early medieval time, this transition was direct. So you did not see any such development where there will be a coercive state exploiting the people, or there are centralization that took a coercive form. And that is why the ideas of feudalism cannot be applied in entire Indian subcontinent or in all the regions. In some areas perhaps this could be applicable. So that is why B.D. Chattopadhyay's work is a welcome reading to understand early medieval India. So the besides B.D. Chattopadhyay, another historian who studies early medieval India is R.S. Sharma, and his book Indian Feudalism is a pioneering work to understand the concept of feudalism in context of India.